welcome to the Leadership Collective podcast, the show where we explore strategies, insights, and tools that drive growth and leadership success. I'm Jenny Mead, your host for today's conversation. After many years leading HR, people and culture across a range of organisations, I now work as an executive coach, board advisor, and fractional chief people officer, helping leaders and their teams navigate growth, change, and the challenges of scaling businesses. This episode is part of our special series From Startup to Scale Up, where we're focusing on the critical steps founders, CEOs and leadership teams need to take as they grow their organisations. In this series, we're covering everything from validating an idea and securing funding to building scalable tech teams and navigating the pitfalls of rapid growth. Today, we're diving into the strategies, timings of hiring a chief revenue officer and building a scalable sales foundation. I'm thrilled to welcome Nathan Collins, who brings deep expertise in scaling sales operations and driving sustainable revenue growth. Together, we'll explore how to identify the right moment to invest in this pivotal role, the key steps to building a strong sales foundation, and how to navigate the challenges of scaling sales effectively. So let me introduce you to Nathan. Nathan is a seasoned sales leader with over 20 years of experience scaling sales operations and driving growth in the IT services and cloud SaaS sectors. He has proven track record of transforming sales teams, achieving record-breaking growth, and forging impactful vendor and client partnerships. Nathan specializes in building scalable sales processes, navigating complex sales cycles, and aligning cross-functional teams to deliver sustainable revenue growth. Passionate about helping startup scales, he brings practical expertise in go-to-market strategies, team development, and balancing rapid growth with long-term success. So a great addition to our podcast series. Thank you for joining us, Nathan.
My pleasure. It's fabulous to be involved. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, let's move on to the first question, Nathan. So we're going to be looking at the timing of when to invest in that CRO. And what stage do you think that a startup should consider investing in a CRO? And how can founders determine the right moment to bring in this level of sales leadership?
That's a good question. So founders are obviously driven to that success. They typically have an innovative technology or product, and they get it to that first level of success. Traditionally, if you look at sales, there are those early adopters, those individuals or companies that want to find that unique technology that's gives them a competitive edge, if you will. So it's quite easy to sell to them as long as you've got great technology. It's got lots of capability. It's unique in many areas, and other competitors don't have it. So those early adopters will trial it and come on board with it. So the initial success, that foundation has been laid. That's at that point it becomes more tricky. So the curve you're looking at then has the next set of customers. They are more conservative. So yes, they want to be relatively early adopters, but they need to understand totality of the value being offered versus what they already have that does something very similar, if that's even a thing. So now it gets really hard for the founder. They've got all of the product development, the design, and all the operational responsibilities, and now they're getting into tricky, almost treacle sales cycles at this stage to grow the number even more. It's at that stage that they should look at taking that responsibility and moving it to a CRO type person. That individual should have the capability to look at the value of the technology being sold, understanding how to align that value to customers who are more conservative in nature, to help them understand what it is that this technology provides versus the competition, versus continuing doing what they're currently doing. And it's at that sort of stage where that customer focused, sales focused resource is better than a founder, even a driven founder, can achieve. And also, founders are usually more creative, exploring opportunities and so forth. It gets really quite dull for them, probably, and I'm talking out of hand. But the more routine and the more you talk about process, the more it gets dull. And that's where the CRO also comes in. I'm not saying I'm dull, but the reality is I'm focused on building scalable, repeatable, boring type businesses that continually hit numbers. Relatively speaking, those numbers should be increasing year over year. So that is really a mundane task to look at all the interconnecting process pieces, the tool sets and so forth, the integration with marketing just to drive into those conservative and later adoption customers as your go to market matures. It's a long-winded answer, Jenny, but that's what I would suggest is the time to look at the CRO when it gets boring.
And I think you've raised a good points that actually reflect on some of the conversations I've had with other guests on this series in terms of actually really defining the product, being clear on what it is and how you're going to sell it, because obviously that's really important when it comes to the investor pitch as well. Do you find that where you've worked with companies, or maybe you've heard of companies that they've actually done that well? Because to me, one of the questions that pops into my head right now is maybe at the earlier stages, just getting some consultative advice before, at the point of when you actually bring in a permanent CRO might actually be useful to help bring that clarity. I just thought I'd throw that question out there to get your thoughts on that.
No, look, founders will be well connected. They haven't just one day appeared as a founder, so they probably come through other organizations. Always reach out to your peer community. I'm a big fan of people you trust, people that you trust who work with other people. Soliciting feedback is essential. Where you can go through where you are in your journey to someone who potentially has done that before, is on that roadmap already, maybe a little bit further developed, and ask them some questions. Pose to them, this is where I am, at which stage, or am I at that stage whereby I should give up some responsibilities for the benefit of the growth or the company in general. It's essential. Again, peer communities and working with people you trust. I'm 100% bought into that as a concept.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Well, let's move on to our another question and looking at the tactical sort of execution now. And you talked about the fact that at the right time, it's a good idea to bring somebody in who's able to bring in repeatable processes and build a really strong sales foundation. What are the key steps that you think a CRO role should take immediately to build that solid sales foundation and set that team up for success?
This is an area that I've done many times over my career in different levels within organizations, 40, 60 person organizations all the way to business units at large vendors. So the first thing you have to do is go back a step. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Creation then, immediately following, would be the go-to-market strategy for what you want to achieve. So how are you going to cover the market? What market? What sales teams would you need to deliver to satisfy that market? What's the channel look like? Are you going to go direct to end user? How are you going to market that end user? Are you going to go through indirect routes to market? Is that one tier or two tier? Are you going to use marketplaces as your Google, Amazon? So fundamentally, you need to figure out how it is you're going to execute. And what are you going to execute? Is it number of units sold? Is it dollar values? Are you a VC funded, or are you a more mature organization going for a transformation? All those things will feed into the creation of a go-to-market strategy. You should not execute without one. And I've arrived at organizations quite a few times where there hasn't been an overarching strategy, and they've tried to execute and they've got it wrong. And picking the pieces up is something that I've had to specialize in over the years. And the first thing I do is figure out what's not working. So once you start to have your go-to-market strategy, you then figure out, okay, what customers do we have? Why are they buying? How can we do that more and sell to customers like this more? So you start to think about value-based selling, segmenting the customers based upon either vertical or the sort of solution that they're buying. And then you start to think about your resources and your route to market, and you want to maximize the most high-value resources to the best locations for where you're going to get the revenue. But you don't want to leave any cracks, because you don't know where the next very large organization is going to come from that's going to buy your solution. So you do want to make sure you're covering all of the pieces on that board. There can't be any cracks. And then it's when it gets back to that boring bit. So you create the marketing strategy, you've segmented your customers, but you still now need to think about driving this through a process. You see, you're thinking about what process, what sales methodology, what CRM tools, what KPIs are important to drive the success for the founder and for the business. And those are really the key next steps. But it all starts from the plan and getting that right, getting it agreed to by the board as well and the founder. So everyone signs on to that plan, and let's go and execute against it.
I think there's some really good points that you've made. And certainly with my background as a chief people officer, my thoughts then go straight to, it's so important to get that hire right in terms of bringing in the right person with the right experience. Because as you say, if it's done, if there's bits that are missed, or if they haven't done it effectively, then the amount of time and investment that you've wasted as a founder, CEO of that company by not bringing in the right sales leader can be catastrophic in many ways. So forgetting about the sales leader's position now, because I think we've kind of covered that one off in terms of getting that person right. Let's look at, you talked about building the sales team and those initial sales hires that you need to bring into the team. What, in your opinion, are the most crucial hires to make first in that sales team? And how do you prioritize between sales, business development, and marketing, all of which kind of go in that complete go-to-market kind of space?
Yeah. So I look at it in two ways. Are you and the organization that you are running, is it outbound heavy or is it inbound heavy? And then let's go through what those two things are. Outbound heavy, so you potentially got a new technology, a new device, or a new product, doesn't have a market. So you're creating from scratch. No one's waking up in that day and saying, I need some of your stuff. So that doesn't exist. So it's basically outbound heavy. This is where marketing come in. You need SDRs, sales development representatives. You need marketing. You need to go and do all of the SEO type stuff, Google ads, and find your customers. So when they search for the concept, they start to find you and your technology. So you create that demand. But you still have to be the outbound. So from that, you're going to go and buy call lists, use Sales Navigator from LinkedIn, and you're going to go and target individuals by role who are going to be the sort of individuals that will take benefit out of what it is that you're selling. So an outbound solution is all about, the marketeers, the SDRs, developing new regions as well. So that's when you look at business development type resources as well. So you get a cluster of leads in a particular area, but no particular customers. You would roll out business development specialists in that particular area or country if you're looking at that. And in those areas where you've got more customers, not just leads, you then start to roll out territory sales representatives to actually execute on that market location. Now, for inbound heavy or companies where they've actually got a technology or device or product that fits in a known required area, so you've got customers who are waking up and going, I want that. And then they've got a list of organizations that they can buy that roughly from. That's inbound. So you're not having to generate or create your own marketplace because the market already exists. What you're trying to do at this stage is generate your unique reasons why that customer should buy from you. So you are actually looking at pretty heavy investments in SEO, Google Ads, etc., heavier than outbound heavy, because you're actually competing already in a market with vested partners, and also by that I mean partners who are already selling your competitors' technology. So you're talking about displacement. So you have to resonate far better in the sales cycles. You need demand generation marketeers who are really capable in that area. You need inside sales, not SDRs at this stage, because you should be getting leads into the organization where they're starting to say, comparing you against other technologies, what is your unique? So you're now talking about individuals who are able to not only initiate the calls, but also talk through the value proposition of your technology versus competitors. So it's the sellers who are in the first third of their career would be fantastic at this area. And then you're starting to look at them closing S&B sort of organizations, low value transactions. But over that, you are looking at territory sales representatives who can execute. So that's how I would categorize. It's basically, are you outbound? Are you inbound? But at all times, and I'm well known for this, I prioritize aptitudes over what the CV says. So by that, I mean, I'm looking for someone in their CV who was a barista, worked at, Greg's, and basically did the hard yards to finance their way through, university by way of example. So they didn't just turn up. Mummy and daddy gave them, all the money they needed. They supported themselves. They've got the desire and they can articulate the reasons why they want your job. Your job is going to do this for them. I'm looking for the aptitude. I am certainly not looking for the CV. And those are the individuals that can take any organization, whether outbound or inbound, from the start to the level of maturity that you need. Because guess what? Job description starts to mean far less, because they just want to take your technology, sell it more, and explode their future. And I just want to be a part of that. And again, I've seen an awful lot of employees. I've hired a whole bunch of people, and I've seen a lot of careers explode following that. And again, it's the aptitude and how you nurture those talented individuals. Does that make sense?
That does, yes. And we actually have a series on which is following this particular episode on thinking about talent acquisition and how you make sure you bring the right people in to really help that organization. So that's a really good segue into that episode. Earlier on in the conversation, you talked about CRM tools, and you talked about the fundamental things that you need. So at an early stage, and obviously these things cost money, at an early stage, companies focus on developing its sales process. What do you think are the absolute musts that need to be in place that people must invest in order to get that sales process absolutely where it needs to be in terms of allowing people to thrive with doing their roles?
It's CRM tools are an essential place to start. I ran a business unit about 10 years ago, globally, sales operations organization. So some founders believe, well, I bought Salesforce or implemented Dynamics. We're set, aren't we? No, you really only just started your journey. So, okay. Are the account pages set up? What are you collecting? Is it integrated with, if you create manufacturing products, ERP solutions? Is your support organization implemented so that whatever they use as well for managing the support queues, etc.? Is that information going into the CRM tool? So does your sales representative know that this customer's happy when they're trying to reach out to them? Hell, we might be trying to drive a Q-end deal, and the customer's just had a Sev1 issue. We were asking them for a purchase order. How do you think that's going to go? So getting the tool implemented and understanding, going back to the plan, how are we going to execute properly to customers, prospects, as well as support these clients so that they don't churn out, is essential. So it's the account pages, the opportunity pages, the lead management pages, so that you can create within the CRM solution a full awareness and picture for your sellers to work within, and that is really essential. Because I also am a firm believer in creating customer journeys and creating this frictionless buying experience for customers as well. But having full, transparent information to the sellers is essential in that. Now, then, when you get into having the CRM, it's still not done because most sellers won't just fill in CRM. It's tax on their time, and they typically don't want to do that unless there is a business benefit to them or a benefit in time or productivity by filling in their CRM. Or you implement CRM in such a way that it also is enshrined in the sales methodology that you also choose, which is just as essential. So that helps them as they go through a sales cycle understand how it aligns to the sales methodology at the quantifying or discovery stage, into the developmental stage, the forecasting stage, through to when you get towards a sellout. When you're starting to commit timeframes and business values, etc. And if that is fully integrated into the sales methodology, you then have adherence. You've got people using the tools. You get the transparency upwards. So your entire organization is now able to project the business that we're going to have at any time frame. And you also have the seller using the tools because it's helping them understand where they are in their own sales cycle and what they have as a gap that they need to address. So that's when you get the proper virtuous feedback loop. And the other thing is, and most organizations forget this last piece, when you create the methodology or you roll out a sales methodology, you've also got to start tracking metrics. What do we mean by a metric? Why is it that you bought what you bought? Is a question to ask customers. What value did you derive from that? And you're either going to get a response which is top line, my organization generated more revenue, or bottom line, we avoided some cost. So you're looking for in metrics that your product, device, or whatever technology help them either drive top line revenue or reduce bottom line cost. And it's attaching yourself to that metric that helps you sell more. And if you understand that by customer and you feed that back into your marketing and execution machine, you then drive more leads and follow on business, more referenceability, more metrics. Then you can socialize that in LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And again, it's the creation of that virtuous loop, which all starts from the correct CRM integration with all third-party applications. It's, again, the most likely thing to mess up in the first place and has the most profound impact. Outside of getting the sales methodology, the entire go-to-market wrong in the first place. That's worse. But this is only just the next worst thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Do you know what? It reminds me of conversations I've had around the senior leadership team tables, where using the CRM and really getting revenue operations data and metrics, as you say, coming through so that it helps you as a leadership team make those decisions to be able to form what's next in the strategy is so critical in my view. And I know the hardships as well of getting people to fill in the CRM and as you say, but once you can get people doing that, the what you can get out of it is just brilliant. So yes, I completely agree with and get what you're saying. One of the other areas I've also seen talked about around, again, leadership tables is when it comes to budget and allocating investment, and the marketing spend can often come up in the same way as HR does, particularly with recruitment spend. So I say that with my hands up as well. But marketing is always a spend that is scrutinised and looked at. So I'm kind of keen to hear your views on when there's some newly secured investment, what portion of that needs to go towards marketing, and how can you make sure that the most impact of those dollars or pounds or whatever it is has the most impact going forward by allocating that spend? What are your views on that?
Yeah, that's a really meaty question, and at the start of the question, we referred to the VC transformative new business. Versus, and I've been at both, versus those longer established organizations that are already profitable but need to transform. They're two different answers to the question. But if you've got this brand new technology, the founder has got market share, new adopters are on board, and wants to gear up, you're talking about 10-20% of their cash flow that year needs to be spent on marketing. 10-20%, if not more. Because, and again, goes back to whether this is inbound or an outbound sort of organization. Is it satisfying an existing requirement, or is it a requirement that's not even known or understood? So, fundamentally, marketing either creates the need or helps you differentiate versus the competitors. And most organizations that are founded will come into the latter. It's a unique capability, and the market already exists, and unfortunately they therefore have to differentiate against much larger competitors who have got massive marketing spend. So to even be noticed, you have to spend way more. So if you're competing in that sort of marketplace, you're going to be talking about the 20+% of your, your capital that you've got in that series of funding needs to go to the marketing organizations, SEO, Google Ads, BDR type resources, SDR type resources, generating leads and executing on those. Now, the organizations wishing to transform is far less. The reality is that they were already generating business. Many were already profitable or borderline profitable, and they just need to change the gears slightly. That's far, far less. But, the fundamentals are always the same because sales and marketing are usually aligned very tightly. No point investing in marketing without having the sales methodology, the processes, the tools, the go-to-market sorted. So no matter what, marketing is an essential and needs to be well-funded part of the organization to generate revenue. And again, it's something that I've spent a bunch of time doing as well, certainly at the reseller. And we got some excellent output as a result.
That's a really good point, actually. And I'm sure those listening to this podcast, that no matter what you spend in the marketing, you want to make sure that those dollars are going to come through. So if you don't have that sales processes so that the funnel can then be managed, it's wasted money potentially. So I think that's a really good process, that you have to do that whole go-to-market strategy in its totality rather than thinking about it in segments. So yeah, a really good takeaway. I'm going to move away from those foundational bits now and actually look at managing tensions and strategic challenges. And this comes from experience as well, in terms of, again, working with leadership teams. And the first place I want to look at is balancing product and sales, because often or not, when you get that first series round of investment or second series round of investment, that investment needs to go into developing the product and putting money into the go-to-market teams. There's always a tension there. And how do you balance that need for, that rapid product development with the pressures to generate those immediate sales, especially when the investor expectations are high? It's a big question, I know, but it's one that I'm sure will be on people's minds.
Collaboration is the only answer to this question. Now, let's go to the root cause of some of these issues. Sales are driven by monthly, sometimes weekly, quarterly or annual targets. To have a salesperson think outside of those terms, well, they wouldn't be in sales. Okay, so they're short term. So they're going to be shouting at product marketing, product creative individuals, saying, "Look, I need the technology to do this because I get to satisfy my customer requirement in this sales cycle over here, and we get to have maybe a win of 100,000." That's fantastic. So if you don't guard against this, the product team can then totally focus on achieving that, but lose sight of the fact that that customer and that bespoke element has taken a whole bunch of the design and research resources away from the long-term strategic direction of the product. So therefore, you just delayed reaching maturity of the technology in a particular value for the overall market opportunity. So you've pushed out probably several $1 million worth of potential opportunity to satisfy that. Now, the answer here could be that's the right thing to do, because you could be early stage and this is a key reference client that's going to drive many times that in terms of value for referenceability, etc. But back to the reason, collaboration. You have to have these grown-up conversations with all lines of business to understand and make that decision together. Is this the right thing to do versus what the strategic goal is for the technology? Do we need to do that now? What are the consequences? Are we prepared for those consequences? Can we get back on track? So if we win that client, we win more customers, can we bring more resources into bear to get back to the development cycles? But, if you leave it just to sellers will, like your children, you want to give your children chocolate all the time. They're not going to thank you ultimately, because ultimately your product's going to be, impacted negatively for a longer period. So you affect more of the sellers who are more unhappy now. I know that's a very funky way of responding to your question, but again, a collaboration is only answer.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point to make. And getting that, from my perspective, one of my roles is getting leaders to collaborate much more effectively. So it's not an easy thing to do, I would say, particularly when you've got individuals who are at certain stages of their careers wanting to make an impact. And yes, it needs to be done carefully. Um, Moving on, you mentioned about metrics earlier on. So there are certain metrics that a business wants to measure, but there's also metrics that investors are going to be looking at as well. And these could be the same, these could have tension within them. What, from your experience, what are the typical KPIs or metrics that investors expect to see? And how can you, as a CRO, balance these with realistic growth rates? Because I know that there's always pressure there. How does that, how, from your experience, what would you say to founders and leaders who are in that position right now?
It goes back to a conversation I would have as I onboard. So, what is the objective here? What's the founder's objective for year one, two, three? What does that look like? What are we aiming for? And from that, you determine what the key metrics are. Now, from a selling leader perspective, the metrics are very different. So you're talking about the length of sales cycles, the average sell price, the margin through channel. You're talking about weighted funnel, so you can actually project funnel landing pipeline being matured. You're talking about deals that are leading from outbound marketing, inbound marketing, and so forth, all of which are great and phenomenal at driving revenue, but not that interesting to a founder, a board, or a venture capitalist organization. So they ultimately want to know, I'm giving you a whole bunch of cash. When are you going to turn a profit? So it's COGS. So COGS is cost of goods sold minus all of the sorry, all the indirect marketing and indirect discounting costs on top of that. So it's all about the creation of that profit for them. So we're going to give you all this cash. Show us a time frame by which you are generating money. And that could be a year, that could be 5 years, but they need to understand that. So the cost of goods sold. But secondarily, you have other things that they're going to be interested in, which indicates whether a cog, which generating very good profit, which is a low cost of sale. They're leading indicators, if you will, and those include things such as overall customer churn. That's important. Why? Because an existing customer is easier to sell to and cross sell to than a new customer would be to bring on board in the first place. So if you're churning customers, you need to replace those customers with new customers, and the length of time taken to get that is higher than the amount of time to nurture the current installed customers and get them to buy more. So they'll be looking at that very seriously. Your churn is too high. You're costing yourself sales cycles. When are you going to fix your leaky sales bucket and your customer churn rate? So they're also looking at customer acquisition. What's the number of customers acquired to in any particular month, quarter, whatever time frame, and what was the cost in terms of sales heads to generate that. Sales velocity. So what's your average sales cycle, etc. How many of your opportunities that are sourced, which costs X, generate what rate in terms of conversion, in terms of revenue, Y. What's your current inventory if you're an inventory based business, and what's the length of time it stays on shelves. All those things start to matter. In the SaaS world, it's like monthly recurring, annually recurring revenue, because that's really important to SaaS type companies. But those key things are indicators that you are on a really interesting COGS journey. And obviously, the lower your cost of sale versus the revenue, the better it is for them and reaching profitability stroke the 1, 2, or 3 year objective for that particular business against the funding that's achieved. Does that make sense? Because they're totally different from a CRO on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, that does, and it reminds me of some investor meetings that I've sat in as an investor myself, in terms of actually what is it that's most important to that business, that particular product, that particular
Yeah.
market, and almost like, I suppose one of the questions that pops into my head is, do you end up having to do some education as part of that process? Because when you invest in one type of business and then go and invest in another type of business, it could be completely different, and you're looking at two different sets of metrics. So do you have to do that, I guess? Do you have to sit and, yeah, you do. I can see you nodding.
Yes, 100%. 100%. And again, from the sales leader's perspective, it is important and essential as part of your go-to-market strategy. Sit down with your leader, understand what is really important, so you can then, on a daily basis, you've got to do what you've got to do from a revenue generative perspective, and you've got to measure that as you've got to measure that, because that's all about driving sales behavior. But after that, how do you translate though? It's like a car. A car's got many components, and all of them are essential to go fast. But you only understand how fast by understanding what the founder, the board, the venture capitalists want. That's how fast. That's the reality.
And the pressures that, being in that position where you want the investor, you've got the investors, you've got the founder, um, you know, with a certain vision and with a certain level of expectations. And I'm gonna move on to navigating market entry now, because actually, how do you go about choosing market entry points? Because I've sat in meetings where people want to go into new markets. There's pressure to go into new markets. Let's say the over in
Mm,
Asia, for
mm, mm.
example, but it may not be right. And I guess, how do you prioritize between the different customer segments or channels in a go-to-market strategy? And what are the indicators that tell you when to expand and where to expand to as well?
So that's a very, very tough question. And again, it should follow through from the business plan, the conversations with the founder. So is that individual focus on achieving the most revenue fastest, or for whatever reason, are they driven by international expansion? So from the creation of that go to market and that conversation, you then look at the pieces you've got on this chessboard, figuring out, do I need to put more pieces in a particular region, or am I focusing on core locations? Now, and that's you started off a macro decision, so looking at the entire board and then making micro decisions, versus, and I've also run, UK and Ireland based regional sort of roles where you're on a micro level making the same sort of decisions, and you're doing it on which vertical or which route to market or which technology type do we go and compete in. But you need to, again, it starts off with the conversations, the go-to-market strategy. But even in the current role I've had, just started a short while ago, I've had to do the very same sort of thing. So we're looking at those clusters of customers and looking to invest in direct sales into those areas. And obviously we have a channel as well, where we can most efficiently service that market. And other areas where we don't have boots on the ground, if you will, there aren't mature routes to market, you choose a different strategy. So you look at, what the requirements are from your business. You look at the revenue you currently got. You look at all of the indicators, and then you make investment decisions in association. So, I mean, at all stages, the CRO needs to focus on the shortest sales cycle, but often that also means by focusing more of the resources in the areas that most likely to drive the revenue earliest. And as I said, a few moments ago, but you cannot leave any cracks. Your go-to-market strategy has to encompass, even if it's by a lesser capability, but it has to encompass all of those routes to market and provide some frictionless way of a client finding you and buying what it is that you have to offer. But that's a really difficult question, and it's macro, it's micro, but it comes from that go-to-market strategy that you create up front, and everything that you've done into this question and the founder's requirements. My founder, I want international expansion, but I need you to start from locations where we got clusters and we got boots on ground, and then build out from there. It's very clear, and that's what most CROs are going to get, the clarity of, right. until you get to a certain size, which is right. Okay, from there, build out, and I want EMEA. I want you to own EMEA in your area, what it is that you sell. But it's all with that organisation on the journey and the founder discussion.
And getting that clarity is so important, even if that means helping that founder pull together that clarity and asking the right questions. Because often or not, I found that it's sometimes in their heads, and you're having to draw it out a little bit. So it's a really good point. I've got two more questions for you, Nathan, and I want to start to kind of close this off as to some of the lessons and some of the tips that you might have. So we talked earlier on about the collaboration with product teams, and I think that that's a good tip to pass on to anybody. From your perspective, when you think about feedback loops with product teams, how can you as a CRO and your team create effective feedback loops with the product team to ensure that that market feedback informs product improvements in real time? And I know this is a big question because there's often a conversation around, are you market led? Are you product led? I'm just going to leave that over to you and say, what do you think? And how would you give somebody advice who's listening on this podcast?
Yeah, no matter what, whether you're market led or product led, you're always customer led. So you need, and again, it comes back to that metric. Why is it your customer has decided to buy your product versus whatever they could have done? That could have been design it themselves, buy someone else's, or not have it. Those are typically the three choices. So it's case studies, references, customer success. It is understanding and having the conversation with your clients. So why are we a fit? And again, it's starting that in the sales cycle, which is what I really focus on in the discovery. Understand what it is that we do. Ask the why questions, many why questions, why it is you haven't fixed this problem before. Why do you need to resolve it now? What is the issue? What are the implications if you don't do this, and understanding the pain. From the pain you can then articulate, so if we were to resolve that with the technology we have to offer, what is the value? Then they come with the core value. Now that is the solicited feedback that we can then put into the generation of our products, marketing, additional sales cycles, etc. But also we can then, knowing that this customer had this value that they derived from our solution, we can then go and survey the market. Other customers that we got, do you also have this problem? Do you use us to resolve this problem? That's awesome. Can we talk about that more? So you can create this ever increasing feedback loop. And then you can actually say, are there any aspects of our technology that doesn't meet your requirements and you wish we could solve for? So again, soliciting and being open to solicit that feedback when your product isn't quite aligning to the requirements. And then again, a collaboration we mentioned a little bit earlier. It's holding very regular activities with the product team, product marketing team, where you sit back and sit down and you go through the survey output and you look at that and are we projecting having this capability in our products in any time frame? No. If not, should we? What's the value? We've got 5 or 6 clients here, most of our big ones, or we got 2 or 3 clients and they're the small ones. Is it a requirement? We can't really see it. Let's go and ask a few more customers, see if we can find it. So sitting down and having those conversations after interviewing, your clients, doing the discovery up front, marketing everything, appropriately, and understanding why our technology that is created sells in the very first stage, and adding this back into the virtuous feedback loop is essential. But again, multi-departmental collaboration. Not sales need this, you must provide.
Yes, okay, I've heard that one before. It's definitely something that needs to be built into that sales training process, that when you think about sales enablement, there's almost like I think from a learning and development perspective, there needs to be something around that product feedback and how you go about doing all of those open questions that you asked, you suggested in speaking with a customer and things like that. It's almost like I'm looking back now at my career and where I've been involved with developing sales training and thinking, actually, we possibly didn't do that as effectively as what you're describing. So I think that's a really good point. The last question that I've got for you is sustainable scaling. Okay, this is always something that's always on our minds in terms of how can we create a sustainable business. But scaling quite rapidly is an art in its own form, I think. How do you avoid the pitfalls of rapid scaling that can often overwhelm the team and potentially then therefore go on and do harm customer satisfaction and all that kind of thing? So what are your views on how you might think about that as a leader?
Yeah, no, that's those desires will typically come from either the venture capitalist organization or the founder, whereby their objective set is extremely aggressive. We're going to, invest massively into headcount on all lines of business, and to that we need to drive X. That's that can be quite a problem should your achievement be far less, and you need to throttle back. What that does mean is that after investing all of that time onboarding, investing in HR, investing in people, their development, the tools. Heaven forbid you use agencies. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but there is a cost associated, sheer amount of cost. And then you miss your targets, and then you have to run back or rein back the spend. So you now actually have a negative feedback loop into your organization. You've got people reapplying for their roles. You've got people being let go. So this is a super one to really be concerned about. So have those conversations, understand what your go-to-market is, understand how you're going to get there, and try to do it incrementally. So, don't try to smash the entire market. Understand how you're going to get to that 20% growth, 30% growth. How are you going to do it through gates, if you will? So we're going to incrementally add to this particular region or this particular go-to-market route. And when we see key performance indicators going in the right direction, we'll invest another tranche of the cash, not give you the entire cash up front. So you're going to have to go through the gates to get the additional spend. So we'll reinvest into your business to grow it even faster. That is a far more sensible approach, in my view. And I like those businesses that also try to, with investment, but get that investment to increase revenue and generate revenue, but do so with profit in mind. Not just, we are going to be extremely unprofitable for the first 3 years, and heaven, and everything aligns, we will then generate a profit in 3 years' time. But we're going to invest massive amounts of money now. I in my career have tried to avoid organizations like that because it's a high risk, high reward, but high risk strategy. I far prefer to be involved in those organizations that take their time, understand the 5-year objective, understand the gates that they want to get there. Will take risks, serious risks, but do so with methodology, business process that they're going to implement, and stability. And again, sales organizations are famous for this, every 12 months reinventing themselves, but having an overarching goal, objective for 3-5 years is essential.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much, Nathan. So that actually wraps up today's conversation. A huge thank you to Nathan Collins for sharing such valuable insights on scaling startups and building high-performing teams. It certainly made me think about my experience. So thank you very much, Nathan, for coming along today and joining us. We've covered so much, from the strategic timing of hiring a role like the CRO to the fundamentals of building a sustainable sales process. If you found this discussion helpful and want to continue growing as a leader, I encourage you to check out the Leadership Collective. They're dedicated to empowering leaders to thrive in today's ever-changing business landscape. You can learn more about their work and how to get involved by visiting theleadershipcollective.global. Thank you for tuning into the Leadership Collective podcast. I'm Jenny Mead, and we'll see you next time. Until then, keep pushing boundaries and leading with purpose.